I remember my first ever hookup presenting as myself. I literally hid a knife under my sofa cushion because I was so afraid that I was going to be attacked by this supposedly straight identifying male, because the guy was coming around to my flat. Then you need a lot of trust to be able to let someone into your personal space, and like, yeah, I felt very afraid of what might happen. He popped up on my Grindr, and I'd recently changed all of my pictures to reflect who I really am. So like, I had makeup, had skirts on, like I was living my best life, like looked fabulous. And then I was so afraid to change the pictures. I've had to come out of the closet twice, basically. So I came out as queer, well, then gay, and then now trans, and it's like, it felt like another layer with Grindr, like I had to do it again. And I changed all my pictures, and I was like, okay, that's it now, that's sex over for me. Because of this like anti-trans subconscious propaganda that was going on in my head. Because of that, I was like, yep, that's it, you know, no more sex for me. And then the messages started coming in like one after the other from the exactly like my type of guy. And it's like all along, that's what was missing. Like I just wasn't being myself. Like the moment that I was myself, the type of guy that I didn't even realize I wanted started to talk to me and pay attention to me. So I came around, and this boy was so lovely, like so lovely. And it was almost like and then after him I went through this phase of fucking straight guys and giving them like prostate orgasm for the first time. Most of the guys that I've done this with have expressed interest in doing it beforehand, before even meeting me, and so consent was always there. Very, you know, very articulate consent. It was very out there from the get-go. Yeah, so spoken about, written about in messages, and then physical consent as well, in, you know, actually like guiding me to the place and stuff like that. But I would say that it was a little bit more difficult for me in that moment, in that first encounter, because I wasn't aware of my own boundaries. And I think I made my own boundaries very plastic and very flexible for him because I was afraid of what might happen. The topping is one example. I am not really a top. And that isn't something that I would, in a relationship, I wouldn't ask or want to do that ever. I don't feel really connected to topping as a sexual experience. But I think in that moment, the novelty of providing them with that experience kind of overrided my lack of want to do it. But at the same time, that is not something that I would have done with, you know, a previous partner who might identify as gay, for example. I think perhaps the reasoning behind it is a mixture. Partly because like I said, I felt maybe it was a bit motivated by fear, and I was afraid if I didn't do all of the things that he wanted, that something might go wrong. But I think for the most part, it was just that I felt fully validated in that moment, and I felt safe. I felt like in an environment where I was validated enough to do that and not have my femininity called into question. The moment that the experience ended, I had a huge smile on my face when I closed the door and he'd left the flat. I went back to the sofa. I'd forgotten completely about the knife because it was such a wonderful, transformative experience. And then I sat down on the sofa and realised what was under the sofa, and I stood up and I lifted up the sofa cushion, and it was just me and the knife. And that felt so... It felt so tragically poetic, the difference in events, like how I felt before the encounter and how I felt after the encounter, and the knife was there before and after, and it was just a very, very kind of jarring moment to stand there with the knife alone in the flat again, completely fine, not having had to have used the knife at all. When I was in school, there was no sex education, no queer sex education whatsoever. All of my sex education was based towards heterosexual sex, puberty and everything. Yeah, I think that is something that is sorely needed in society. Education is the way you fight any kind of ignorance or any kind of like poor knowledge. The propagation of misinformation is happening in society. So like I was drummed into, even subconsciously, I had it drummed into me that as a trans person you will be attacked like on a hookup. I think subconsciously I thought something's got to give, and he must be crazy somehow, you know, he's going to attack me or something like that. And that's definitely from the media and from, you know, hearing about only the bad stories, hearing about only the crime statistics and the homicide statistics and everything. And we need to hear about those things. Of course we need to hear about those things. The Trans Day of Remembrance is a really important thing, and other initiatives like it, because we need to know about the atrocities that befall the trans community, but we also need to know about the good things, because if I'd have been told more about the good stories, then I maybe would have carried that with me into that first experience, and it wouldn't have been so fearful.